the Indian economy is going to grow from the current $4 trillion in size to $55 trillion. We will need people like Shiva to come to the episode and share the experience to help the current generation of entrepreneurs in India. There will be a lot of crore-pratis created in India, and it will require people like Shiva to come and tell about what are the current problems the Indian economy or the sector that they specialize in has. And this will present to you as a case study that people can then use for business ideas. And a crore-pratis, that's what India will create. We'll go from 4 trillion to 55 trillion. That's one aspect for this podcast. The second one is that India will also need a lot of managers. So Shiva will share his experience about, he runs his own company now. He's going to share his experience about how he grows managers in his company. कैसे managerial talent को develop. I know that you've been working in the healthcare industry recently and you have your own company in the healthcare industry. Do you want to start presenting to us what the healthcare sector in India looks like, how it is doing, what are the, like we used to call it the SWOT analysis, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats in this industry, and where are the opportunities for new entrepreneurs?
Okay, sure. You said healthcare. I think healthcare is too wide an ambit. Let's first focus on health insurance. Right? And the interest in this spiked during COVID, because if you notice, during COVID, when there was huge uncertainty about whether somebody would live or not, or whether if in case somebody contracts the virus, would you have access to healthcare? And then post that, what the cost of healthcare would be. The health insurance industry did not really stand up and deliver in those trying times, which is what made me dig deeper. And what made me also dig deeper was my familiarity with the sector, because I was part of the sector when it got privatized in 2001. I joined ICICI Lombard as part of the founding team in 2002 and was there for a good 4.5 years. Okay, so I was familiar. I knew what the fault lines were. I was curious to know why they did not really deliver at that point in time. In fact, what actually happened was you found people buying a lot of what we call top-up insurance in those days, because it was completely anxiety-led. Because the buzz was that, listen, if you get hospitalized, you end up paying 30 lakhs, 40 lakhs, if at all you get a bed. And then your typical insurance coverage that you have, either if you're employed from your employer's side, is about 3 lakhs to 5 lakhs. So what happens to the delta? So therefore, people started buying top-up insurance, which was over and above what their employers would give them. This was typically an urban phenomenon, because we're talking about somebody who had access to insurance. But then even this sector, which is typically educated, typically is aware of what the category is, stopped renewing the stock-up program 1 year down the line. Then the anxiety dropped, right? So it showed, I would say, a false spike in penetration and the growth numbers and all of that. And everybody was gung-ho saying that, hey, listen, this is COVID actually has been an inflection point for us. Sure enough, it is an inflection point because the awareness spiked. I don't think there was something, the lack of comprehension of the category resulted in people not adopting this category and sustaining this. So it was not a lifestyle choice that people made. It was anxiety-led response to the entire problem, right? So, which is when I looked at it and said that, you know what, this category seems to be stuck in the past. Nothing much has changed in the last 20 years that I'm aware of, to be honest. I'm sure, no offense meant. I'm sure every company is working hard. In fact, the phrase that I like to say often is that people are operationally fatigued running this industry. Right? Yeah. It's a hard industry to, ensure that, everything runs. You have to keep yourself within the guardrails as a regulator on one side. On the other hand, you've got the entire healthcare system, which poses new risks, right? In terms of new diseases that come up, new infections that come up. So how does somebody which is actually in a risk transfer business of trying to protect you gauge what the claims are going to be? So that itself is a big issue. On the healthcare, the supply side for an insurance company, which delivers the cost, which is the claims. On the demand side is, you have people who are still not aware of what the product is. There is awareness, but there's no comprehension. And you have a regulator which is, breathing down your neck saying that, listen, I want you to do more. I want you to push penetration. In all of that, if you look at it, the sad story is that individual penetration is not moved up, right?
Can you repeat that last sentence again? Individual penetration has not...
Penetration of individual health insurance in this country, or what is technically called retail health insurance, has not moved up significantly, right? So the category grows at 20%, which is the fastest growing category amongst the general insurance space. So you typically will see the value in value terms, it will double in every 4 years, 4.5 years, at the kind of CAGR that it has. But the most of that value growth is coming from price increases.
Okay, just pause there for a second. So Shiva, everybody, you're from IIM Ahmedabad, so you can say 20% annual growth means double the size in 4 years. But for other viewers, I'll tell you how Shiva did it. So Shiva knows the rule of 72. So whatever is the annual growth rate, to divide that by 72, and you will get approximate number of years that the category will take to double. And that's how Shiva was able to come up with that answer very fast. And another thing Shiva pointed out, which is very valuable, is this idea of operational fatigue. And what Shiva is again coming from is his MBA education, where in most businesses, people end up being operationally fatigued and strategically lazy. So you're not willing to talk about this, how do you solve a problem strategically, but you're like, whatever you're doing, do it faster, do it more, do it faster, do it more, and there's operational fatigue. And what Shiva is...
I completely agree with what you're saying. In fact, I have a different terminology for it. I call it operationally fatigued and cognitively lazy. Okay, it's both.
Yeah, or strategically lazy. I call it. But it's the same thing, Shiva. You're absolutely correct.
Absolutely.
And what Shiva is showing us here, so for all the entrepreneurs out there who want to use this intelligent person, Shiva, who's here with us, understand this, the difference between operational fatigue and strategically lazy. You want to be strategically, you want to be working hard and not operationally working. And what Shiva is doing is laying out a framework of how he's identified the problems in the healthcare insurance industry, and now he's going to come up with his strategy and so on. So Shiva, please continue. Very interesting.
Okay, so arising out of that, I looked at, what the different segments are. And I think, the loose brick in the wall, so to speak, which is ripe for disruption, is what is traditionally called group health insurance. Okay. Right. So this group health insurance is the rapidly growing piece. This is growing at about 15-20%, maybe every year. But there is no pricing power the insurer has on this. Okay. The engagement between an insurer and an employer, for example, who is basically the one who is creating the group, there is no bargaining power the insurer has completely with the employer. Right?
Shiva, I have a question, and not just for our viewers, but also for me. Is when you are saying group health insurance, is this the insurance that I'm an employee and my employer is saying, okay, as part of your CTC or cost to company, you also get X% of health insurance or life insurance?
Absolutely.
Is there any other is that the only segment in group health insurance? The
group is a slightly umbrella term. See, you can create a group for any set of people and form a group. One of the groups is the employer-employee group. The employee group, which an employer is the anchor for. Okay. And if you look at group insurance today in this country, I think about 18 crores or 20 crore people are covered by that. And if you look at private sector's contribution to that, my sense is about 40% of that figure.
That's very impressive.
Yeah. So 7 crores is the number of people who are covered under employee group insurance. Okay.
Yes. I'll just share some numbers with America. In America, around 60% of American population is covered through employer group health insurance. So like Google goes out and buys insurance for all its employees at Google. Facebook goes out and buys insurance for all its employees at Facebook. So 60% of America is covered that way. So that means America is around 400 million people today. So around 240 million people are covered that way, which is around, if you convert it to...
The reason is it's a closed loop system, right? You have a provider system there, which is traditionally called the HMO system, the healthcare managed organizations, right? Which means once you're part of the network, then anything that happens to you is taken care of. Okay, number one. 2, there is cost that you pay, which is very nominal compared to if you were to buy private insurance in the market.
Yes.
Right? That said, your employer is contributing a significant chunk of the premium.
Yes.
In the US. Okay, which is why people don't want to opt out of the entire employment stranglehold, because health costs are extremely high. If you look at the US, for example, the per capita income in the US is close to $80,000 today, right? Yes. From whatever studies that I've done. And the average cost of insurance for an individual or for his family is about $20,000. So you're talking about 25% of your annual income is what is set aside to buy health insurance cover, because the cost of healthcare in the US is prohibitively high. India is a slightly different story. India, we don't have this closed loop systems or these managed care systems that we have, right? While in the US, my understanding is that 97% is managed care and 3% is indemnity insurance. In India, almost 100% of everything is indemnity insurance, which means it gives the insurer the illusion of choice that I can go to any provider and, get my costs reimbursed or taken care of by the insurance company. So it's a very different construct here. There's good news and bad news. The good news is that the cost of healthcare in India is way, way, way lower than what it is in the US. Okay. That said, the other thing is that the premiums that an individual pays today as a percentage of his annual salary, if you were to look at maybe a professional in, say, the city of Bangalore who makes about, say, 25 lakhs a year or 30 lakhs, I don't think he's going to buy insurance beyond 30,000 rupees a year. He probably spends 1% of his CTC or maybe 2% at best if he's suddenly gotten a little more aware and anxious and worried, then he'll spend 2%.
And that's what his employer is spending, right? He's not spending directly. That is what his employer is spending. That's what info.
He's spending, no. This is what if he were to go and buy private insurance. This is what he'll end up spending. Take a typical profile of somebody who's 30, 35 years old. Okay. Maybe he's just got married. Maybe he's got one kid today. He wants to pick up insurance in the market. He'll probably buy a 10 lakh cover for himself, and for his spouse and kid. I don't think he'll end up spending more than 50,000, 60,000 rupees a year maximum, even if he were to buy separate limits for each one of the members of the family today. So that is 2%. Let's look at that number. The same thing in the US is 25% or 20%.
But this is when it's individual insurance. But what happens
if it's a group? It comes down drastically. If he's part of a large organization, the pricing that his employer would pay the insurance company, it would be if he's buying insurance only for the individual year. Here we spoke about a situation where he's buying for himself, his spouse, and his kid.
His kids.
Yeah. So assuming 20,000 is the cost that he would pay for retail insurance or the street price, his employer would negotiate a price of 10,000 to 12,000 rupees for it.
Oh, wow.
So the pricing for group employee insurance in this country is not scientific. It is not actually based. It is not risk pricing. It is effectively a working capital product.
It's like gain the market share.
It is that, listen, all things being the same employees this year versus last year. Last year's claim becomes this year's premium. That's it. There is no science number. Okay?
Right. And is that because we don't have historical data on group insurance? We've got individual insurance, what the claims might...
No, it's got nothing to do with the data. There is data because every time you pay out on a claim, that individual life, whether it's part of a group or not, is still a valid data point for you to price at risk. And therefore, what happens is that companies have been able to squeeze insurers so much today, and insurers don't have a choice in some situations because they provide a bouquet of products to the employer. So they don't want to be left out by not having to provide this alone as a piece. There's a historical context to it as well. I don't know if you have time to get into that, but I'll keep it short. Privatization happened in 2000, right? All the private sector companies were given licenses. That is number one. Two, till about 2006 or 2007, we had price controls on many products in general insurance space, right? So we had something called the Tariff Advisory Council, and it's out of what we call the Blue Book in those days, which means the property prices, property insurance, marine, motor, everything used to be price controlled. So if I'm a new entrant, and if I have to go and pick up the business from an existing organization, which has got world-class asset management practices, right? They do risk management at a great level. He doesn't get the benefit of better pricing for his property insurance, for example. He still has to pay.
Actually, because of price control, he cannot offer even lower prices.
You could not at that point in time, till 2007. So what therefore used to happen was, there was a group health portfolio that's available. So that would get bundled along with the one that was price controlled. So effectively, the subsidy on the property that you wanted to give would be reflected in the group health pricing.
Wow. Okay. So here is a lesson. For entrepreneurs and one of our audience for our channel, which is almost 2,600 subscribers now. And most of our subscribers are IAS officers, IIM professors. We have because it's an intense channel. We talk about topics that nobody else is talking about. So one of the advice for all the IAS officers or subscribers to our channel, please don't have price controls, because when you have price controls, entrepreneurs come and then they have to play games like this where you are bundling and cross-subsidizing with other products, like Shiva explained, by giving them discount on the property insurance by bundling a group health insurance.
Effectively. So it's a perverse incentive structure, right? So then companies would buy both as a bouquet. They would not buy anything as a silo or a standalone product and evaluate it on its own merits. So that set the that set the tone for group health to be underpriced to begin with. It has never recovered.
Shiva, I've got this question. Now, typically, I don't know what the technical term in the insurance industry is, but there is, in the fund management industry, we call it portfolio theory. The risk of a portfolio is going to be less than the risk of an individual stock or an asset. So there will always be a lower group insurance premium than if everyone went individually to the same insurance. Now, you mentioned it's about 30% in India. Is that correct? That 15,000 versus a 50,000 for the same insurance cover, roughly. Is that the 70% discount?
No. For the group health insurance, no. Group health will operate at about 35% to 40% discount to the retail health insurance space.
To the retail. So 30% discount. Yes. But there will always be a discount on group health for various reasons, not just bargaining power, but also portfolio theory because of the actuarial risk also, because you buy the whole portfolio.
No, it is not because of that. Because when you have data points which are individuals, you price the individual product also based on the assumption that you have got enough data points or you'll have enough customers for that cohort.
Yes.
Okay, so it's not likely to be any different. Sure enough, when you have homogeneous profiles working for a certain company and you're able to, understand that they are possibly lesser risk than other cohorts which are not based on the type of profession, but it's more age-based cohorts, sure, there'll be a slight difference. Okay? But that advantage is nullified by the kind of extra covers that you throw in group insurance today, which a typical person who's buying retail health insurance will not get. For example, there is something called pre-existing diseases, right? Which if you have to buy a retail health insurance cover, there is a waiting period for it. You have to wait from anywhere between, now the regulation has changed. They are saying that insurance companies can even offer day zero waiting period, which means you can buy it back at an extra price if I'm the consumer. Okay. So that is offered free of cost effectively in a group construct. Okay. Typically in companies which are service companies, you have what is called maternity benefits which are covered, no questions asked, right? If you buy a retail health insurance and you have to say, listen, there's a waiting period of 9 months because you don't want somebody who knows that they're going to, if there is a woman consumer or customer, knowing that she's going to deliver the next 2 months, go and pick up insurance and therefore get the insurance to pay for the pregnancy. Now, there are a lot of restrictions that are there in the retail health insurance product, though it is priced much higher. Lesser in terms of coverage, higher in terms of price. Okay, because retail health insurance works on the concept of true risk pricing plus your cost of overheads, and the margins that you want on the product. But in group health insurance today, while there'll be a lot of people who push back and say, no, it's getting profitable and all that, none of the companies today will actually come and give you the exact P&L for the group construct or the group portfolio today, right? They will still talk about how group is running at 90% or 95% claims ratio. Claims is not the only cost that you incur, right? You've got costs of managing the operations, cost of acquiring the customers, all of that. So in the insurance parlance, what we call as combined ratio, which is basically your claims plus your commission ratio plus your OPEX cost, right? That should ideally in a developed market setting is normally at 100, right? Which means you're pricing it correctly. You're clearing the market at this price. And what you make money off is the investment income that you have because you get float. I pick up the premium on day one for the year and then I pay out across, different points in time. And that float builds up and the float gives you an yield or that asset pool that you manage. And most valuations of insurance companies are done on that basis of how big their investment book is and what the yield is. Okay. Assuming that investment book is going to grow at a certain rate. But in India, if you find what with health insurance, the combined ratio is anywhere between 120 to 150 for a new entrant with no sight of bringing this down in a structured manner. That said, it's nothing to do with the companies per se, right? I think everybody is trying hard. Everybody is putting their best foot forward. But I think we need to take a step back and look at the problem from first principles and then say, listen, what do we do about new products? What do we do to ensure that, we create a consumer pull for this category? What do we do to ensure the distribution costs come down? The distribution costs are completely out of whack in this industry, okay? In the group, the distribution costs are not too high. And there's a perverse incentive as to why companies do group. because there is a regulator with all good intent has said that, listen, your cost of managing your business or what is called expense of management should not exceed 35% for a health insurance company. So the only way you will keep that overall 35% number in line in your business cost structure configuration is to ensure you do more and more of group.
Okay.
Right? Because the group, what you pay out is 7%, 7.5% as commission. What you pay out in retail can vary anywhere between 15% to 60%. So if you're using, again, it's a bargaining power, that comes into the picture. If I am an insurance company, I'm dealing with a bank. The bank will not distribute my product unless I gave him anything upwards of 40% today.
Right. So then, doesn't this equalize? Because you're giving a huge discount. The insurance companies are giving a huge discount to the corporates, but otherwise for retail customers, they would have been pricing it higher. But then a lot of that would leak to the introducer or the intermediary.
No. Today, what's happening? Insurance companies are crying foul. They don't make money. People who make money in this business are the intermediaries. Okay. So what's happening?
So Shiva is teaching us. Shiva, I just want to distill some of the wisdom that you're sharing with us. So one of the
you're using big words, man. I'm a little
I'm using big words because I don't know who else. Listen, I don't know who else in India can explain the insurance sector the way you are doing it. And again, I have read up on the health insurance sector in India, and a lot of this that you're telling me, I couldn't figure out from what I read up, the YouTube videos that I watched. So I'm using big words because you deserve those big words, because that is the knowledge you're bringing. So two things that I'm taking back. One, for all small businesses in India, buy group insurance for your employees. Because Shiva here, an expert in the health insurance sector, is telling us that if your employees have to go and buy the insurance on their own, they'll be paying more. And the second thing that Shiva is telling us is that when you buy group insurance for your employees, you'll pay less, but you'll get the same services. But when these employees go out and they buy their own private individual health insurance, they'll pay more, but the money doesn't go to the insurance company so they can get better care. The money actually goes to the marketing channel.
No, that's one thing. Marketing costs are very high, distribution costs are high, but I have one small correction to make here. I would strongly advise companies not to buy group insurance. I'm saying if you want a system to become better today, please understand that the correct price for the product is somewhere between the pricing for group insurance and the pricing for retail health insurance. That is a true price for the product. Okay. And the more that, the earlier an employee is told, my view personally is that every life is unique. Okay. And therefore you should not be part of a group, because what can happen to you is not likely to happen to somebody. So in a group, what happens is that a healthy individual is paying for somebody, his co-worker who's not healthy that year. The healthy individual is not getting the benefit of his good health across time. Every year the pricing is reset. And that is not good news for him. But if he's going to build a track record for himself, if he says, hey, listen, you know what? I want to have the ability of buying my own individual insurance. And if the employer can facilitate that in the same cost structure of distribution, will that not be fantastic? Today, my employer is willing to pay me. So let's take this hypothetical example of somebody who's paying, say, 10,000 rupees or 12,000 rupees as the group insurance premium. Today, the employer is paying all the 12,000 rupees on his behalf. If you were to go to the market and pick up something which is more or less the same coverage, right, in the retail market, he'll pay 20,000 rupees. Would it not be so much better if there's a product that lands at, say, 15,000 or 16,000 rupees, which gives him the ability to control his destiny? And what I mean by this is, would it not be great if he says, hey, listen, the employer is willing to pay 12,000, I'll pay 4,000 from my own pocket. Take control of this insurance. It will travel with me wherever I go. The one line USP is that this moves with me like my PF account moves with me.
Yep.
Today, what happens is that my employer, then I lose all the benefit. I start all over again. If I quit my employer to then start a new venture of my own, I enter the retail insurance, I port the category at a much later point in time, and it is completely age dependent what the pricing is going to be. It does not take into account the fact that, I had good health behavior in the past. Because if I buy a retail insurance product, I keep getting indemnity bonuses. I can technically, in about 4 years' time, across most companies, though it's not standard, double my indemnity limit. If I'm buying 5 lakhs today, 4 claim-free years will make it 10 lakhs. Okay, and therefore I built this wall of protection which is completely mine. If I were to stay in the company and spend this 4 years, my limit will not go up beyond 5 lakhs. Because at every point in time, they're squeezing the insurer on pricing. The company is not willing to pay him, give me more indemnity or give me more coverage. Because he has a budget, he has a boundary condition which he has to, adhere to, right? So my view is that, listen, if you're an SME, if you're new to insurance, as a benevolent employer, please tell the employee, listen, this is my budget for you. You go and buy your individual insurance. If required, let me negotiate this for you. Okay.
Shiva, one quick question I'm quite curious about, because I'm not up to date on the Indian taxation. Is what does the company pay when they provide this as a benefit to the employee versus if the employee was to take? How does the tax rates differ? Is there like a perquisite tax on this or not?
No. So whatever the employer pays today is expensed out in the employer's P&L directly. There is no
the employee is not paying tax. So, but if the employee got, like you're saying, if they got the 12,000 or the 16,000, they would pay tax at whatever 35% odd.
No. So here what happens is that you have a co-pay product where the employer pays the 12,000. Okay. That goes out from his pocket. What the employee is paying only 4,000 rupees from his pocket. For the 4,000, he can claim the ATD exemption that's available today.
Okay.
For medical insurance. This 4,000 is just for a notional number. Up to 25,000 rupees of premium payment, he gets the tax exemption, right? There is no confusion. The employer can get the benefit for the 12,000 that he has. The employer can get the 4,000, ATD premium exemption. No problem. Right?
Okay, so you're saying that on the tax, from a tax question, this is not hurtful for the employee.
It is not any more inefficient than what the current taxation structure is, number one. You have workarounds to ensure that, these two payments are segregated while it is going towards the same policy payment. There is no problem. You can ensure that. There's no problem.
So Shiva just explained to us something so important that my brain could not catch it in the first revision, and it required him to intervene. Because what I was recommending to everyone was that all the small businesses in India should go out and buy health insurance for their employees because it's going to be cheaper. But what Shiva is saying is that from the employee's perspective, it's better to have individual insurance because, say you're working for Infosys, if you have your individual insurance and after 3 years, you decide to go out and become an entrepreneur, you now don't have to worry about your health insurance. But exactly. If you were insured by Infosys, and then you decide to go out and become an entrepreneur, now you have one more thing to worry about health insurance. The second reason that Shiva gave us of why you should be getting your private health insurance is this idea that, say you are spending 15,000 rupees each year on your private health insurance, and if you don't use the product for 4 years, then the health insurance companies will take your limit from 5 lakh annual spend on your health to 10 lakhs. So those kind of benefits, if Infosys is buying insurance for you, you don't get those benefits, right?
Exactly.
So those are the two reasons why Shiva is saying that though for people, it will cost them around 20% more. I heard the number that, again, approximate numbers that Infosys is spending 12,000 rupees for insuring me. Personally, I'll have to spend around 15,000. So around 15-20% more I have to spend. But there are two advantages for this 15-20% extra spend. Advantage one, when I become an entrepreneur, when my life journey changes, say I move to a different city or I get married and I have to move away, those benefits stay with me. If I'm a healthy individual, I'm taking care of my health, the amount that I'll get back in a year increases. Those are the two advantages.
Absolutely.
But I want to, so thank you for making this problem more clearer to me or more rich, the dimensions more rich. But I want to ask you this, okay? One of the problems that I face is that I get overwhelmed. As an individual, I need to take care of less things because there's so much I need to take care of. And hence, because, I studied BCom at Shriram College of Commerce before I went to IIM Bangalore, and I remember ATD exemption. But once you mention ATD, I start sweating. Oh my God, ATD, income tax, pata nahi kya hai yaar. So how do you value? So you told us that by paying 15% more, we get these two benefits. But there's a disadvantage. On the disadvantage column is that I have to take care of one more thing in my life. So,
which is why I think you need innovation in this category. The current way this is delivered will obviously create more confusion, right? You need to have innovation wherein you say that, hey, listen, it is anyway through the employer. Employer will get the feed or the ATD payment that you have made. It will go into his tax working automatically. All these things can be automated. Yeah, these things can be pulled. And the employer will know exactly whether, when he's contributed this 12,000, whether you have actually closed the loop and paid the 4,000 and pick up the insurance or not. He gets the report in any case, right? So I don't think it is any more complex than what it was. I'm not saying that our tax rules are simple, okay? We've got an old regime and a new regime, and there is a lot of things that are up in the air. People really don't know which way to go. which I understand. That said, I think it is no less, or it is not any more onerous in terms of tax from what it was earlier.
Okay.
That's my limited.
Okay, so Shiva, let me ask you this. So you explained to us a little bit of history of the health insurance sector. It got privatized in 2000, 2001 regime. Till 2007, we had price controls. People were playing all kinds of games. And then this hangover of low-cost products has stayed in the industry. You also shared with us that around 20 crore people in India today have group health insurance, with around 60% government entities, 40% private entities.
Not in the private sector, yeah. I would say
in the private sector.
Yeah, that's my set.
Yeah. My latest estimate of Indian population is around 140 crores. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Correct.
So out of 140 crores, how many people have insurance today? Like, is 50% of it?
What insurance companies cover? I think it will be about 24 crores, 25 crores.
So is the rest of the India uninsured or
no, rest
I keep hearing
of India, about 40-45 crores have got access to the IIM Bharat scheme, which is a PMJ scheme, right? There are a bunch of people who got access to what is called the CGHS. If you're an ex-central government employee, you've got a central government health scheme. For the blue-collar workers, you have something called the ESIC, Employment State Insurance, whatever, corporation or whatever, right? Then you've got ex-servicemen ke liye, there is one scheme that's available. So there are a multitude of schemes. So the government spends on all of this, right? You've got CGHS hospitals, which are run by the government. You've got ESIC as an entire institution run by the government, funded by the government. So again, going one step macro, the outlay for health in this year's budget is close to 90,000 crores. Okay.
Wow. What percentage of GDP is that?
Well, what percentage of that? My sense is, I've not been able to reconcile these numbers, to be honest, right? I look at the various sources of data. There'll be a statement where they say that, listen, the goal is to take it to 2.5% of GDP by 24, 25 or 25, 26. But if I look at the 90,000 crore number, it doesn't add up, okay? All I can say is that the total healthcare spend in the country is between 7 lakh to 8 lakh crores annually, okay? So if I use
the number I've usually come across is, if it just a headline number, is about 2.5% is spent on
GDP. Correct. 2.5% is not what the government spends. It's a 2.5% is the total spent on healthcare in the country. So if you look at our country, right, we're about $4 trillion. Okay. Yeah. $4 trillion in rupee terms will be what? It will be about 320 lakh thousand crores or whatever. So 2.5% of that will be about 7.5 lakh crores, thereabouts.
Okay.
7.5 lakh to 8 lakh crores. So I think that's the kind of calculation I've done in my head. Right. And of this, government is spending 10%. That's my sense. Okay. 10 to 12%. Insurance is at about 1,20,000 crores. So insurance is about maybe, if you take 8 as the base, then we are at about 15%. So between 15 and 10. So the rest is all self-funded. So in fact, out of pocket in our country, while they say it's coming down and all that, it's still substantial. Directionally, it's still very, very high. About 45 to 50% of all healthcare expenditure is out-of-pocket expenditure, which means it's coming out of people's own savings or borrowings, for which they did not take any prior protection earlier.
But Shiva, why is that? Because if we have Ayushman Bharat scheme by the government, say if a person who is 40 years old in India, in Bangalore, gets sick, and say he's an auto rickshaw driver, why can't he just use Ayushman Bharat?
Okay, but look at the numbers, no? Ayushman Bharat today, the annual spend from the government side is about 8,000 crores. That's it. So what they have done, which I think is a good beginning, but it's still not very mature, is that they have devised a number of packages. And Ayushman Bharat is only for hospitalization. And again, this is very important. Probably I should have said this upfront. Most insurance in our country is only for hospitalization. It is not for what in the insurance parlance it's called IPD and OPD, inpatient department and outpatient department. It is all for IPD purposes. Okay. So, but bulk of the expense happens for OPD, for consultation, medicines, or diagnostic, right? So that is where the insurance companies really don't come to the party at all there. Unlike the US, if you're a part of managed care, everything is taken care of, right?
Yes. So, I got viral fever 2 weeks ago. I walked into Stanford outpatient clinic and they took care of everything. And then they said, go to Walgreens, pick up your medication. I went to Walgreens, picked up my medication. Not even $1 was spent anywhere.
Exactly. And we're talking about, even then you're saying, US has got challenges in terms of the national healthcare system, right? But the US is a rich country. My worry is that this Ayushman Bharat is going to increase. Government is going to be broke in some time. And we would not be a rich country like the US. So my worry is that we are not going to be in great shape. 2040, I think the demographic dividend we're talking about in this country is going to shift. The number of older people in the workforce is going to be more than the number of younger people. So we have got 15 years to fix this problem, according to me. It is too vast and humongous a problem for us to solve. But I think we need to start making the right interventions across the entire life cycle.
So Shiva, you might not know this, but actually ran a healthcare company in the US from 2013 to 2022.
Okay.
So I have a very deep understanding of the US healthcare industry. In India, when say a person works for a larger company like Infosys, when he gets group health insurance, it's only for when he's hospitalized. He's not getting group health insurance if eye exam करवाना है, diabetes है तो दवाई लेनी है, blood test करवाना है, is my diabetes managed or not? None of that. All of that is out of pocket.
Out of pocket, yeah.
Oh my God.
So that's the fundamental difference.
Is that not even covered in the Ayushman?
No, I saw that it's only for hospitalization. They really can't, afford to have this. See, so the problem is the supply side is so fragmented, right? If you look at the US, you've got some of these, maybe I don't know how many provider networks are there, but I think you're not too many in number. You have to be part of a provider network. Then everything there, the data flows regarding the patient, then everything is captured. It's a closed loop system. There's no problem, right? Here, the supply side is so fragmented. Yeah? The cost of treatment varies from geography to geography, right? Now, how do you then standardize the protocols to begin with?
Okay, so
now there is a very interesting thing that's happening in this country, which is called the National NDHM, I think, National Digital Health Mission, wherein there is a serious effort to ensure that there is this right kind of plumbing which is done for all the providers, big or small, right? So there is this great guy, I've never met him, and I'm a great fan of what he's attempting to do. This person called Rizwan Koita in Bombay. He runs a company called, I think, CTS Tech, which is a healthcare firm. Apparently made a lot of money servicing the US market, the provider market. I think Bain Capital has picked up a stake. Apparently it's a unicorn now. He's made his millions, but he's also decided to take a step back and create what is called the Rizwan Koita Foundation. He is now the chairperson of this NABH, National Accreditation Board for Health, which means that will be the quality certification authority for all the hospitals in the country, right? And from his own foundation, he is now trying to build a platform by which, all the hospitals can use that as the hospital information system, but therefore standardize patient health records, ensure all the records move seamlessly across different ecosystem providers, whether it be the doctor or the clinician or the hospital or the pharmacy or whatever, right? The diagnostic chain, whatever. He's trying to do that. Obviously, it requires a lot of standardization, all right? And for them to port this, I think there's some subsidy that the government is willing to give as well. So it's a very ambitious project, but a very noble one. So once he does that, then it doesn't matter. I just need to, the government is also coming with what is called an ABA account, which is the Ayushman Bharat Health account that everybody should have now. If you buy insurance, you must have or automatically an ABA account is generated, right? The objective of that is that while there are two sides to this coin, there's one set of people who said, listen, the government wants to know everything that I'm doing. It's a surveillance economy that we have, all of that. But I think somebody who's poor doesn't care about surveillance. He wants benefits, according to me, right? Whether it be DBT or whatever, right? So they're happily willing to create this account, and that account will be like your UHID, right? So
Universal Healthcare ID. Yeah. UHID, Universal Healthcare ID.
Universal Health Identification Number. So once you have that, whichever clinician you go to, whichever hospital you go to, they'll be able to pull out your records, right? The biggest challenge in healthcare is what? Information asymmetry, right?
Yes.
The doctor who's treating me doesn't know completely about all that I've done in the past. He doesn't have access to it. At that point in time, there is a dialogue that happens where I tell him a few things. He needs to pull out my entire medical history and then start looking at it, right? And then...
So, Shiva, thank you so much for bringing so much knowledge. This whole idea of information asymmetry. We are running out of time. We only have an hour left. But Shiva, thank you for bringing up this idea of information asymmetry. We'll have you talk a couple of minutes about that because a lot of people are watching. They don't understand that. But also thank you for introducing our channel to Mr. Rizwan. And I would like to make an open offer to Mr. Rizwan to come to this channel. We have 2,600 subscribers today. Most of them people who graduated from IIS offices and so on. So what we talk in this channel actually influences what happens in India. So, and And it's so good to see someone so experienced like you actually tipping your hat to Mr. Rizwan, who seems to be doing things out of passion and out of love for our country.
Right, when somebody does something, I think what we need more of is public spiritedness. I think we've got exceptional talent. We've got extremely great skill sets. But I think somewhere people should know that they need to make an impact. Or I don't like to use these fancy words, which I think is all over your social media today. Everybody talks about purpose and all. It's not about purpose. It's about saying that, hey, listen, are we doing the right thing to begin with? Or are we trying to, solve the problem with the existing constraints without trying to even attempt to remove the constraints? So then it's about who's smarter in managing the constraints. Somebody who came in earlier will always have the head start over somebody who's coming in new. Therefore, beyond a point, if the constraints are going to limit your scope of influence or the scope of activity, you will not find new entrants coming into any category beyond a point.
So Shiva, you've presented to us a lot of issues that are there in the healthcare insurance sector in India.
Yeah.
I'm actually sad to hear that it's only hospitalizations that are covered, because in my personal life, 90% of my healthcare spend has been non-hospitalizations.
Correct. What is stopping us from providing this is, if that's your question, early attempts are being made. Some people are trying to do it, but they're very wary of the fact that there can be rampant fraud in this country. Why? Because it's not digitized. So if I submit a bill for reimbursement, I met the doctor, this is what you prescribe, these are my bills, then everything can be bought for a price. Okay. So there are some startups that have gone down under already, trying to do this OPD game. Right? I won't take the name, that's not fair. But started with a lot of fanfare, felt that, I will just build top of the funnel. But then it was a leaky bucket completely, because it was they had no problem till the funding pipe was alive and kicking, because they could show more additions on top and then justify why there's some attrition happening or why there is some extra cost of, running the business. But soon enough, they even tried coupling this with, an IPD product from a traditional insurer and taking it to market. They tried that as well. But I think it did not work because they did not have a closed loop system. You must be able to track the entire activity of the patient or the customer around this, which they did not.
Absolutely. In fact, Shiva, so I worked in India 25 years ago. And from my recollection, it was standard practice even in top corporates where people used to ask कि बॉस को end में मेडिकल का बिल है, एक कंपनी ने अलाउंस दिया हुआ है कि कौन से केमिस्ट से कौन बिल बना कर देगा. It was very standard practice. It wasn't even supposed to be thought as fraud. I'm definitely talking about back in the day, because it was part of your own CTC. The only thing that you were saving is some tax. Because
there was nothing. There was no shame in doing it, because it said that, hey, listen, the government is not doing anything for me. Let me outsmart the government for a change. So which is done, which is accepted practice.
Exactly. And I have to tell you, so unlike Vix, I'm not a healthcare entrepreneur, but I've been in the UK for the last 15 years, an investor in healthcare. And I track this the reason I don't know healthcare insurance enough is because in the UK we have the NHS, which also doubles up as an insurer effectively. So we don't do, but when I read about the National Digital Health Mission and the unified, the UHI thing, I was so amazed, because that has been going on for about 5 or 6 years, at least, if I remember, maybe a bit longer. I think it might have been derailed because of COVID and all that. But the hope that I had is I've been looking at NHS. So in fact, I'm part of the NHS Accelerator, where we look at companies which can provide digital.
And I just want to point out, Miglani is actually a fellow of Royal Health Society in Society of Medicine in UK. So he's a pretty big guy. He doesn't like to talk about it.
You know what? We spoke about information asymmetry. I think it's playing out here. I didn't even know that he was this big. I didn't even know he had his interest in healthcare.
In the edge,
you ran a healthcare company in the US.
Yes, 9 years.
See, the thing is, I have to tell you that as an investor, you basically dipped your fingers in so many sectors effectively over the years that you're like kind of a jack of a lot of sectors. So, but healthcare is one of my more of a specialist sector than just being that sector. But I was trying to relate to NHS digitization. I've seen it for more than a decade.
Now, मैं आपसे जानना चाहूँगा, and I want to push on this. So, what I want to understand from you is what are the set of ideas or idea space? The idea about what's that idea space that will create 1,000 entrepreneurs in India who will all become croropatis by solving the healthcare problems. What is some of the space that people should be exploring today?
Oh, in the healthcare space specifically?
Yes. Yes, in the healthcare insurance space.
In the health insurance space, I'll tell you there are constraints because it's regulated, right? Because the regulator has got the best of intent, but I think he's also very worried that if a new person is licensed, then he needs to have the correct financial backing for it. I think we don't have that kind of capital backing ideas in the health insurance space today. What we are seeing is the tip of the iceberg where people who want to do maybe algorithmic claims management, for example, or if somebody is saying, hey, you know what, I can help you solve for digital outreach, or you know what, I can help you probably develop new products for you, which is more advisory. I think those kind of startups are mushrooming. Okay. What is also happening is that healthcare financing is picking up. I can see more and more startups coming in that space. The belief is that, as premiums are going to become larger, it is going to be a significant component of your take-home pay. And like how there has been this mass consumerization of credit that's happened in this country in the last 3-4 years, the entire banking system is only lending to consumers. They're not lending to corporates in this country. I don't know if you track that, right? And actually, it's
yes. So finally, the Indian culture has changed. We didn't used to believe in credit cards. We didn't used to spend on credit cards, but that has changed. People now
changed. Over-leveraged.
Over-leveraged.
Other way. In fact, we don't. The good thing is in India, we don't call things subprime like the US. But we have a lot of subprime crises brewing in different areas, in different geographies, in different sectors and all of that. And what is helping is the fact that, traditionally our savings rate is pretty high, right? We're close to about 28%, 29%, though it's dipped from, I think it used to be 32, 34%, right? I think obviously people are consuming more, no two ways about it. Two, the good thing is that savings are getting financialized more. People are not putting into hard assets as much. So therefore, there is enough liquidity in the system at any point in time. Much of it is finding its way to the stock markets today. This is why the stock markets are in its own orbit, in its own zone today, and devoid from reality on the ground in terms of what's happening. The growth is decent, does not warrant this kind of, stock market exuberance. Employment continues to be a challenge today in this country. We're not creating enough jobs. There are policy nudges that promote manufacturing in this country. I strongly believe that services will only ensure that urbanization is, more rapid, right? If you really want to create a broad-based economy which is well distributed in terms of wealth, then you need to have manufacturing which goes to the hinterlands of the country, right? It is not rocket science. We all know this. For years on end, we have had concessions being given to companies that go into the backward areas. You had a tax concession or whatever. All of that happens. But you need to have chunkier investments coming. Now the good news is that geopolitically, we have an advantage. Everybody wants to de-risk China. Therefore, people are coming to India. So some of these things are happening despite poor policy environment, despite poor infrastructure that we're able to provide today, right? So while all of this happens, I think there are a string of opportunities as well. I don't want to paint this gloomy picture. India is a land of opportunity. Where else will you find a teeming market like this, which is growing, right? The rest of the world is struggling with growth. And here we've got the numbers. It's not just the growth rate, right? And you're finding more and more people, moving up the income levels, which means discretionary spending is on the rise, which you did not have before. Which means you need to now have a set of products and services which cater to this requirement at scale, right? It's no longer products and services which you said that, this is for the ultra elite or it's the ultra HNI segments. Now the aspiring India is also wanting to have the same kind of lifestyle today, right? So I think there is opportunity across all sectors, if you ask me. But the sectors that I think will do extremely well and should, because I think that's critical for us. Anything in education and health, I think are fundamentally, my belief is that these two are access platforms, right? You need to provide this. It's actually enshrined in our constitution as a fundamental right. But, how well it's delivered, it's a different matter altogether. But healthcare, one is, I think the body of knowledge around medicine is vastly changing at a rapid pace, right? It's no longer confined to certain boundaries. There are new things. I think infectious diseases is a new area which people are not even, scratch the surface. We don't know enough. So how will that impact us, right? So we have these problems, but we have these. Healthcare is a huge area. I think the magnitude of the problem can actually kind of keep you a little sullen, but I think there's so much one can do. It's humongous. It's not a small problem to solve in this country at scale for 1.4 billion people. It's not a European country, right? So
which are the top three areas? Let's say I decide to move back to India. I know a bit of healthcare. I don't really know healthcare insurance, but maybe adjacent areas which are related.
If you got a lot of capital, go set up a hospital, you'll make money today.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, that's one. Two, if you want to telemedicine, do that. Go to a rural area and set up a center which relies only on technology. I think that's a great space to be in to deliver last mile.
Thank you, Shiva. I think you just made a lot of people successful with this. Set up a telemedicine center in rural India. कि ज़्यादा पैसा नहीं भी है, तो it's not very hard setting up a telemedicine center.
Oh, it's not at all, sir. Not at all hard. There are lots of interesting pilots being done. Yeah. In fact, there's something called 10-bed ICU. This person called Shrikant Nadamuni who's doing it. He was the one who set up something called EGA earlier, along with Nandan. This 10-bed ICU is a fantastic concept. They go to a government hospital and say, listen, give us 10 beds. We'll convert that into ICU beds. And for those 10 ICU beds, you will have a technology platform, okay, wherein you don't need the expert to deliver tertiary care there to the patient. Will ensure that, he does all the blood markers and all those tests are done there locally. At the same time, things are sent through a technology platform to a centralized hub where it is read by experts, and then the expert advice is, sent back. So in a way, invest in AI. AI for healthcare, I think, is a huge space. I think India will never have enough doctors to take care of all our 1.4 billion people. At no point in time will we have that. That supply side, if you look at physical capacity, it's not going to happen. Can AI help? I think AI can help. Technology can help. Technology can help. Like what my friend keeps saying that, hey, listen, you know what? I think the poor will have AI. The rich will have humans as doctors who will read off AI and then also give you that extra layer of, advice. And for most things, you really don't need to go to a hospital, right? If you're able to do early detection, right, at the primary care stage, you don't send that patient to secondary and tertiary in any case. So the systemic cost of the healthcare will come down automatically. And technology, I think, is just taking off, if you ask me. So I'm very bullish on the fact that, who will win there, I don't know. I'm not an expert. But I think directionally, technology for healthcare is a great space to be in. Earlier, technology for healthcare meant somebody is doing hospital information systems, going and doing some bespoke HIS for a hospital. That's a useless business, right? Because you'll only scale up to this, because every guy will want his custom requirements in terms of functionality. You'll go and build that, and then you will be stuck for bandwidth because you are doing some bug fixes for 60% of your time. It will not let you scale. Today, you can build great products. You can build products which are on the handheld for individuals. In fact, Nachiket Moore, I don't know if you've heard of him, ex-ICICI. He's one of the more used to be DMD at ICICI Bank.
What's a DMD, please?
Or Deputy Managing Director at ICICI.
Yeah, he was reporting to Kamath, right? Back then.
Yeah, correct. And he was, one of the brightest minds in the area of finance and economics in this country. He was a batchmate of Raghuram Rajan, 1987 batch. So when Raghuram Rajan was the governor at RBI, Nachiket was also on the board of governors, right? And advising them. And then he consciously moved away from the world of finance and economics to get into health systems and policy, public policy. And like what he calls himself, he's a student of public policy in the health space. But I think he's got some of the best ideas in the healthcare space today. And he's done so much research. He reads so much. He writes some fantastic white papers. I've not read all of them, but I can tell you, when such people are there, I think we get encouraged. That at least policy direction is good. He sits on, I think he's involved with IRDA. In fact, there is one company which in the health insurance space which is attempting to go Bharat first instead of going to, urban India, which is Narayana Healthcare. They launched a health insurance product. Very interesting take on the category itself. I hope they succeed, because I think we need not one, we need thousands of them to actually come in this country. If you look at the US, you've got about 950 odd insurance companies. Okay, that's how fragmented it is. In India, we have all of 32 or 33 today, and our population is much larger. So there,
wow. So Shiva, you gave our
I guess
list.
I gave you one broad brush, no specific points, I guess.
No, then that's how it has to be. It has to be the idea space. And you gave venture capitalists on our podcast 2 big areas. One, set up these remote health platforms in rural areas.
Telemedicine.
Another, telemedicine. Another, this whole hospitals in India, because there's not enough supply of healthcare services. Third, this whole idea about technology. Whole idea about put the power in the hands of the consumer. Give him an app with which he can ask questions and he can solve.
Or do something which is the equivalent of an OYO for hospitals, yeah.
Okay. Tell us more about OYO for hospitals. That sounds interesting to me.
Yeah, yes. I don't know if I should go to this hospital X or Y. I need somebody who curates this and tells me that this is a standard. They are up to a certain standard, right? They're value providers for me. I don't need to go to...
What's the pricing? Like, can I today find the pricing of MRI at different hospitals in India? Calcutta, there are 20 hospitals within 10-minute driving distance of me. I would like to know what is the pricing of MRI in each.
Correct. I need to know. I need to not just, is there a difference in price? Is there a difference in quality? Is it been well written by somebody like a third party across certain standards that we have? And therefore, what the consumer reviews are, right? If all of these things are encouraging, I'll walk into something that I'm not familiar with.
So,
I mean, as a health consumer in India, I also want to know one more thing. कि अगर मैं MRI तो कहीं मेरे को 25,000 other tests तो नहीं करवा देंगे.
That's the principal agent problem that we have.
Yep.
Between the patient and the doctor, right? As a customer or a patient, you assume the doctor will do whatever is in your best interest. The doctor wants to do everything in your best interest, but he also wants to do what is in his best interest. His best interest today are the incentive systems which makes him refer patients to another network of doctors that he has. It's like a quid pro quo, right? Unfortunately, it is not seen as an unethical thing to do. In fact, to the contrary, they all have been given targets in hospitals. Say that, listen, what is your billing per patient? So everybody has to work towards the billing. So
and their compensation bonuses are linked to how their billing volume.
Right, yeah. So which is why hospitals also say, listen, if you're a specialist, you can come and consult in my hospital. I'll give you the space because I will just take a percentage on top of what you're doing. And therefore, if you bill more, good for you, right? We have got the entire delivery system because the fundamental equation of trust is between the patient and the doctor. I blindly go by what my doctor says, right? I will not question him. While today Google has come and all that and doctors get annoyed, I still will go because I need to know, I need to be in good hands. End of the day, Google will not take care of that for me. And therefore, the referral pathways there are no standard protocols. How do you bring protocols to the system, right? Like what somebody said, hey, listen, make the data flow across the entire system, number one. Two, have standards saying that, hey, listen, this is within range, this is not within range. Three, like for example, how is the claim, adjudicated in the US? Everything has got a code number, every entry, right?
CPT code. We call it CPT code, yeah.
Then you look at the description, then you look at the value. There could be some things which are non-standard, but you check whether it's within a certain range or not. Then you say good to go, not good to go, right? Fundamentally. Today, we don't have those protocols. One is the protocol, is what should be the kind of test.
So we don't have CPT codes in India for services provided?
No. We don't non-standard.
Oh my God. So I am telling everyone, the ideas that are being discussed in this podcast will create billionaires, and we're going to check back in 2050 when all three of us are old men, and we'll say that the ideas that Shiva gave us in this podcast, how many billionaires in India, how many crorepati's in India these ideas created.
Picking up some of these ideas, Shiva, I will discuss them with you as an investor, maybe as a future entrepreneur in India, because I'm very optimistic about overall healthcare in India and the private opportunities that are there, partly because of the volume of patients or possible patients, but also because of the direction, both from the Ayushman coverage that the government is doing, and therefore which will need private providers, but also from the data, the data health initiative, and there are a few, but we'll take those offline. Shiva,
No.
last thing about this case study, last thing about future. What is your vision, but not like 2050? 5 years from now, 2029. By the time 2029 elections come, what do you think healthcare in India will look like?
That's an interesting question. In fact, I was about to say, listen, I don't believe in the 2047 vision, to be honest.
Yeah, आगे तो I can't even say 2 years, by the way, but ठीक है.
I think policy enthusiasts have to talk about this because in my view, I think it's a cop-out of some kind where you say you defer accountability to the future and therefore, you show this shiny new object, which obviously nobody can evaluate what you're doing, right? So if you're sticking your neck out, talk about the next 5 years. Next 5 years will be double is the question, right? From where we are today. We are a 4 trillion economy. We will not double, right? Because we grow at 6% or 7%. There's nothing wrong with 7% growth. I think we should first reconcile to the fact that nothing wrong with 7% growth. Will policy prescription maybe release another 100 basis? Sure, it will release. Okay? It'll automatically, I think the power of compounding will kick in after some time, right? Because when we hit a certain threshold size, things begin to happen. In fact, I was reading somewhere that, while we are per capita, we're very low, we're $2,500 per capita in terms of income. In terms of purchasing power parity, we are probably number 3 or number 4, right? Because our cost structures are also very different. So we need policy prescriptions for the country that we are, which are basically based on first principles thinking. I think too much of this Western influence in terms of policy making does not work in India as well. I think Western influence is very important because I think they have done some things in the past. They have got a very empirical approach to things, which is important to understand. Scientific rigor is there, and capital also comes from there. So we got to respect that. At the same time, I think we need to have our own approaches to problem solving in this country, which I think will happen next 5 years. I think entrepreneurship is on a roll here. I think capital inflows in this country are higher. There is no stigma to failing anymore in this country, and you can keep moving on. And the perceived difference between being in a job vis-a-vis trying your own stuff, right? The opportunity cost, which was very high earlier on, is no longer there, right? Because you've got enough stories of people making it big here. So there is this desire for people to, jump into the space. And the good news is that no corporate prepares you to get into a startup in any case, right? Those skill sets are very different. These skill sets are very different, right? And I think this generation of the people who are now coming in have no confusion in their head. Nobody wants to join a large company. I can tell you that. Right? People want to be, hey, listen, let me roll up my sleeves, dirty my hands and do something. I think a very small percentage of people actually want to go and work for large companies now. And I think that's the challenge that large companies are facing in terms of talent acquisition.
I mean, in fact, I see that, and maybe I might disagree slightly on where that directionality is going. I do believe that young people should work. I don't know whether it should be for 5 years or 2 years, but they need to work in a company, established company in the sector, and learn the ropes. Why learn it on your own time? Why learn it? At least learn the sector. And then, because in a large company, you'll see all the small opportunities that the large company, which is not nimble usually, is not able to take. And then you come out and abhi apna startup karo. Rather than लोग कॉलेज से निकल के करते हैं कि यार मेरे को सब कुछ पता है इस सेक्टर के. I think that is a bit of an overkill in my opinion.
I agree with you. I am not for a minute recommending that as the ideal career path as well. But I'm saying
So right, that people are doing that. A lot of
people are doing that. I'm only saying that what I'm observing. While I completely agree that, go work in a large company for 2 years, 3 years, till such point wherein you don't become complacent and lazy in the head. Okay? But there is so much to learn from a large company in terms of how organization functions, how you get along with people, how do you get things done, how do you get things done through people, right? Understand that you need to be patient because impatience is a big challenge, right? You need to know that certain things take time and for good reason. So get that also into your system, appreciate that. In the process, like what you say, it will sense some opportunity, then think about it. But then you're wired to evaluating things in a calibrated manner, objectively, without, rush of blood. That is what a large company hopefully should teach you. Because large companies are not nimble. They take time over things, right? They go through multiple iterations. So some of those things, if you get internalized in your head, then you'll know that you've got to do those, run those checks in your system, in your head, before you then take the plunge. And that is the rigor that we're talking about. So nothing is done without a process, right? What you don't see in startups is that there is no validation of anything. It is just that I want to change the world. I am a great guy. I feel very good about myself. I have got age on my side. That is my mantra. And therefore, please give me capital. I will work on this problem and solve it with no understanding of the domain. Just because you think that you can code a few pages and you have tech on your side, people plunge into it. I think a little bit of blind belief in your abilities is also required. Because you also can't have this other extreme of saying, I will look at everything 360-degree view, wait, watch, evaluate, because then it's analysis paralysis. You also need some, I would say the irrationality of youth is important, right? When you plunge
or the foolish optimism. The foolish optimism, you need a bit of that.
Yeah, you need a little bit of that, to not question too many things and then plunge in it, because who knows, man, product markets swing, differently over time. So, and therefore, if you're already prepared, if you're already in that place, then you would probably be in the right place in time for it to take off. You never know. There are innumerable stories of, companies which were almost facing death, which suddenly, had one customer, one shot in the arm, and one silver bullet, and then everything, took off into a different trajectory. We've all seen that, right?
Awesome, Shiva. On that note, I will thank you so much. There are some deep insights that I have got, and I'm 100% sure that all the viewers who have reached this far, they have learned and they're probably thinking about the next big opportunities, at least in the healthcare industry, if not generally from the words of motivation. Now, I'm going to pause it here if you want a 2-minute break. And
developed in 1970s, 1980s, right? So Epic and all these were developed in 1970s, 1980s. They've literally written their own programming language. They've written their own database. They're not using industry standard programming language or databases. So the software moves very slow, very clunky. But organizations, Stanford and like big hospital chain networks, they've invested $1 billion plus to completely imbibe software like Epic in their systems, So the idea was that can a smaller startup say that, look, we're not going to use Epic, we're going to write our own system, and can we deliver better healthcare through this, our own system, and trying to solve this principal agent and incentive alignment. And the other thing in India, in America, that's picking up is value care, where we can go to the insurance companies and say that, look, pay us X amount of dollars, say $2,000 to take care of this life for a year. Don't pay us for each interaction. So right now in the US, the payments are still based on interaction. So Stanford makes money every time I go see a doctor at Stanford. But our idea was, can we make a pitch to the insurance company, say that, look, pay us X amount of dollars per provider, per patient, so align my incentive with your incentive. So we did that with those 3-4 ideas, started it in 2013, sold it in 2022 October. And for the last year and a half, I took a little bit of a break. And now I'm doing another startup. It's called talk2.app. The idea is you'll be able to go to talk2.app/doctor. You'll be able to talk to a doctor. Talk2.app/structural engineer. You can talk to a structural engineer. Talk2.app, you'll be able to say /Shiva, and people will actually be able to talk to you if you create a profile on the system.
I see.
The idea is,
What is
that
it?
it's called talk2.app. So, आप browser में talk2.app type करोगे, तो वो and the thesis is that loneliness is a big epidemic, and not everybody can afford a therapist, right? तो लोगों से बात करने को चाहिए. A lot of men need virtual girlfriends. From starting all from there to a lot of people need to talk to doctors, engineers. And the other key insight that I'm betting my next 3 or 4 years of my life on is that a person would rather talk to AI-enabled doctor instead of an AI doctor. दोनों में बहुत difference है. An AI doctor is जब से बात कर रहे हो, AI-enabled doctor है कि डॉक्टर फिर भी एक डैशबोर्ड पे सब कुछ देख पा रहा है कि AI मेरे बिहाफ पे क्या बात कर रही है. So there's a little bit of foolish optimism. There's a little bit of realization that at the age of 47, this is probably my last chance to be foolishly optimistic. So that's what I'm working.
No, I think your thesis said, people want to speak to an AI-enabled doctor.
Instead of an AI doctor. That's a very key insight.
Completely, right? We'll never point a finger at Tesla if one of the cars, gets the accident. Human error is condoned. Right, we don't mind the human doctor making error even after using AI. That is that allowance. We won't allow a machine to make error.
Yes. So it's at a very prelim stage, and I obviously get a lot of help from my friend and almost like a brother now, Miglani. Miglani से काफी brainstorm करता हूँ, उसको prototype सब दिखाता हूँ. So this is what it looks like. talk2.app/ तो अभी तो मेरे इंटरनल आप प्रोग्रामर से भी बात कर सकते हो, टीचर से भी बात कर सकते हो, एक यूट्यूबर से भी बात कर सकते हो. So basically all these personalities become AI enabled. So that's the thesis, but it's such a very so the domain is talk2.app. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to shill my own startup. Let me say that, Shiva.
No, yeah, this is good. I think your core need is correct. I'm sorry you have sized the market there and all that, and at what price point you can push that.
Yeah.